Here are 13 steps to cold calling that actually work so you can overfill your funnel and your calendar. Number 1, embrace the fear. Now, if you're scared of cold calling, or if you ever felt scared, nervous, or anxious, just so you know, you are not alone. A lot of people feel the exact same way as well. And it's oftentimes because there is a lot of rejection on the phones. But when you really think about it, what's the absolute worst thing that can happen on a cold call? They don't answer, they chew you out, they yell at you, tell you never to call back, they curse you out, whatever. The reality is they're already not a customer. So the worst that can happen is they still are not a customer. So if you understand that to be true, then you know the first thing you must do is just embrace, internalize the fear. Just own it's going to happen and take action regardless of it. Which ties into point number 2. Focus on the process and detach from the outcome. When we get focused on the outcome of booking meetings and closing deals, oftentimes we come across very sleazy and gross on the phones. However, if we focus on the actual process and actually being present and being able to serve on the phones, we sound actually better and we actually have a better chance of actually booking the meetings. And I'll cover a few other steps in this video that'll help you detach from the outcome and focus on the process. Such as number 3, the separation is in the preparation. In this step, the more prepared you are, it's going to just naturally build your confidence. So for example, if you are just rolling out of bed, you pull up a crappy list, you do some terrible search in your CRM and start making calls, you're probably not going to feel that good. However, if you take the time to curate a high quality list, highly targeted, it's your right ideal customer profile, the right people you want to talk to, you've qualified them, you did a little bit of homework in advance, you're going to feel better by simply doing a little bit of preparation in advance. And the cool part is that takes zero skill. It just takes a little bit of time and focus to properly prepare so you feel good about the calls you're actually going to make. Step number 4, set yourself up to win. Now, this next point kind of ties into the past point of the separation and the preparation, but ultimately, are you setting yourself up to win? Whether it's your phone list, to how you target, to how you break things down in your list you're going to call on, etc. But it goes beyond that. When you really think about it, when you don't really feel great, you are going to make bad calls. That's just a reality. So think about what makes you feel terrible or not on your A game, and you can do the inverse of that. So for example, if you don't get proper sleep, how good are you really going to call? How effective are those calls? For instance, if you only slept for 2 hours last night because you're out partying all night, and now you try to make calls today, how good are you really going to be able to feel? How long are you really going to last on the phones? So get proper sleep. Also, think about even what you're eating, what your actual diet is. If you eat, say, leftover pizza and a bunch of junk food like Pop-Tarts, etc., in the morning before you start making calls, how good are you going to feel? How good is your stomach going to feel? You can feel pretty gross, and truth be told, if you feel gross, you're not going to want to make calls. How about your headspace? For instance, before you start making calls, what are you consuming and feeding your mind with? Are you reading the news? Are you scrolling social media? Are you trying to compare yourself to other people? Are you putting a bunch of bad stuff in your brain before you even start making calls? Or are you controlling that? Are you setting yourself up to win? Like when you think about these things, such as making sure you get proper sleep, make sure you have proper diet, making sure you're not consuming a bunch of negative stuff before you start making calls, those are 100% controllable that you can start implementing literally right now. They'll just make you feel better when you actually start your cold call session. And this also goes into eliminating things as well. And just think about even your desk space. Are you eliminating things on your desk that actually are distraction to you? So for example, if your desk is a huge mess, you got post-it notes, you got pieces of paper, you got old mail, you got old plates of food, you got old drinks, old coffee cups, etc. Are you really positioning yourself in a place where you can have clear headspace to actually just sit and make calls and book meetings? Probably not. So what can you do? Set yourself up to win by cleaning up your desk space and make sure you are setting your environment up to actually win. So when you think about this, when you actually are intentional with how you sleep, how you eat, how you actually set yourself up to win, your chances of success are now drastically higher, and you haven't picked up the phone quite yet. Step number 5, warm up. Now think about the first cold call of the day that you make. How much warm up are you actually doing? Meaning, how many times have you walked through out loud exactly what you're going to say, possible objections, etc. before you make that call? Chances are you probably aren't really doing any type of warm up. And when you think about the top athletes of any game, before any game or championship they have, they always warm up. So for example, Michael Phelps, world-class swimmer, on world championship days or Olympic competing days, he's not just waking him out of bed and then just jumping in the pool and start racing. He's not doing that. He's warming up properly. He's stretching properly. He's going to go swim in the warm-up pool several thousand meters before even his race, because he's making sure everything is properly warmed up, all the muscles he's going to work. And when you're about to cold call, you want to also warm up the muscles you're going to work, such as your brain, your vocals, your tongue, even your body movement. The more warmed up you're going to be, the better it's going to help you actually make calls. And I'm always a firm believer, you should always prepare for the worst, expect the best. So it's warming up, expecting 3, 4, 5, 10 objections on the phones. So if you only get 1 or 2, it's so much easier to actually book it because you're expecting something much worse. Step number 6, time block. Whenever you're doing something that's challenging or requires a lot of mental bandwidth, I always recommend that on your calendar, you actually time block out when you're going to plan out every single day, every single week, exactly when you are going to sit down and make those calls. And during that time, only make calls. That's it. Don't do anything else. Don't check social media. Don't check Slack. Don't check your Outlook. Just literally sit and make calls. When you time block and you are disciplined to actually make calls during that time, you will see a higher throughput for the whole week by simply committing to yourself. Now, one of the things I do recommend that can really help you quite a bit, to help me personally, is having an actual timer. Whether you use your phone to set a timer for a 30, 60, or 45-minute block, or you can set a timer like this, you can set it to whatever you want it to be at. Number 7, use frameworks and scripts. Now, I know what you're thinking. Some of you are like, oh, no, I'm not a script person. That's just not me. That's not how I want to do things. I don't want to sound like a robot, etc. Listen, if you read a script like a script, you will sound like a robot and you won't book any meetings. But the way you really want to picture a script or a framework is, it's like a path towards the same destination. So I want you to imagine a framework or script. It's like driving on an 8-lane freeway. If you know where you are, point A, you want to go to point B. If you know exactly where those places are, if you know where A and B is, and you know the framework to get there, the road to get there, then it's much easier to actually drive there. And because it's an 8-lane road, depending on how it goes, you might speed up, slow down, change lanes, go left, go right, and let other people pass you as well to get to the same end goal. But you can only do that if you have a framework or script to follow, because once you have that, it makes it much easier to just on the fly based on the prospect. And the key is to really make sure it doesn't sound like a script or a framework. Is you must make sure you practice to a point where it is second nature to you. It's muscle memory, so you don't need to think at all. But the only way to get there is literally perfect practice leading up to that point. Step number 8, PITA. That's pace, inflection, tonality, and attitude. The reality is when you have a script or framework you're following, it's important to have the right words to say, but what's even more important is actually how you say it. What's your pace like? What's your inflection like? What's your tonality and what's your attitude? Ensure you have the right PITA every single time, because if you, regardless of whatever scripts you have, as long as your PITA is solid, you'll be able to make it sound like you, and you'll ultimately book more meetings because of that. And truth be told, the only way you can really address your pace, your inflection, your tonality, your attitude is only if you know your script framework inside and out. Because when you know it inside and out, you're able to adjust on the fly to actually make it solid and relevant for that prospect you're actually talking to. Step number 9, know the most common objections and actually how to handle them. When a prospect throws you an objection, how do you sound when you're overcoming that objection? Does it sound like it's the first time you ever heard it and you're surprised? Or does it sound like you've heard it literally thousands of times and it's not an objection? So for example, if someone says, yeah, you know what, maybe we can meet, but go ahead and send me an email with some information. I'll look at it and get it back to you. Now the average rep stumbles over this and they're like, okay, well, sure, maybe we should still like set up a meeting still, and then I can send you some information. Well, that doesn't sound very good, even though they probably have received the objection literally millions of times. Versus, hey Marcus, I could definitely do that, but here's reality. There's literally thousands of things I could send you, and I hate to send you all those things because reality is you're probably not gonna look at it anyway. So do you have a few minutes for me to dive in a little more detail with you so I can make sure I send to you what's actually most relevant for you? Boom. And now you can dive in a little bit deeper, and now you turn into a better conversation already because you simply know that objection is going to happen anyways. So know the most common objections and be prepared on how to handle them and practice to the point where it's simply muscle memory. So you can include the PITA I mentioned earlier. Step number 10, ask for a specific time. One of the simple mistakes I see many salespeople make when they're actually on the call, and they've done an incredible job overcoming the objection, is after they overcome the objection, they basically just pause. and they wait for that prospect to respond. So instead, once you end and hand the objection, just end and ask for a very specific time, right? So versus just pausing and saying nothing, or just pausing and then saying something like, so do you want to talk on Thursday? Get really, really specific. Hey, so, like with that being said, do you have some time available to discuss at more detail at Thursday at 11 o'clock? Notice how much better that sounds when you are that specific too, because now you can focus the energy of the product to that singular time, and that time doesn't work, that's not a problem. Now you can overcome that time objection with another time as a result. Step number 11, send an invite and wait for them to accept the invite. So the mistake many reps make is they get so excited, the customer says, yes, cool, sounds great. They hang up, they send the invite, and then they get ghosted. Now, the reality is maybe the prospect intentionally ghosted or maybe did not. We don't really know. So we want to minimize the chances of that happening. We also want the prospect to also gain further commitment as well. They're actually going to show up. So once you lock up a time, let's say it's Thursday at 8 o'clock. Hey, give me 1 second, Marcus. Is your email xyz@google.com? Yes, cool. I just sent it over to you for Thursday at 11. Did you get that? Yes, I did. Can you accept it? Yes. Cool. Boom. Just by simply doing that, you will see your show rate will actually increase by simply taking a few minutes to actually pause and actually confirm they actually received the invite. Step number 12, be consistent. All the things I mentioned today, it's relatively easy to actually do it one time or for a week, for a couple of weeks. But the truth be told, the best cold callers are really, really consistent. They are consistent with embracing a fear, time blocking, knowing their objections, proper preparation, preparing themselves to win, etc., etc., etc. And if you want to have consistent results, it starts with doing the right things consistently well. There is no magic pill or silver bullet in cold calling. It's being able to be wildly consistent with the fundamentals and doing them wildly well over and over and over without convincing yourself you need to do something different. And when you are really consistent with your scripts, your frameworks, and how you actually run things, over time, you will have data points on what you're currently doing. So if you want to improve or change things, you have a baseline to compare it to. And the mistake many people make is they try something for a little while and then they say, oh, that works really well. Let me try something different. And suddenly that thing doesn't work well. And they keep trying changing things over and over and over versus being focused, being consistent, and choosing a few things to really work on and being consistent to the point where they don't give up until they get the result they actually want to get. Step number 13, which is arguably probably the most important step, which is be patient and treat cold calling as a craft. I don't know about you, but I personally was not amazing overnight. In fact, I was the worst cold caller, but I was really patient and consistent and did these things I mentioned in this video. And over time, I actually got better and better over time. As it continued to compound over time, it got better and better and better as a result, as the skills continue to stack. And you yourself want to treat the same way where you are treating it as a craft. You want to be patient and focus on the right things consistently to start improving your game over time. You want to build that muscle memory and you want to get the reps in. Now, and the mistakes that people make is they wait for the reps to be put in when they're actually talking to prospects. Get the reps in before you start making calls. So this way, when you're actually on the call, you are much more prepared and you have a higher chance for success as well. And that'll build your confidence too. So ultimately, you want to treat it like you are a craftsman, a craftsperson, where this is your craft. And when you focus on it as a craft, you focus on different things. You focus on the process. You focus on becoming better and better and better every single day. You focus on knowing your numbers, all your conversions at every single stage of the cold call. So this way you can focus on gradually increasing it over time. So you're not focused on necessarily just pure quantity. You actually focus on quality, high quality conversion. So ultimately you can focus on becoming better at the actual game, which is no different than top professional athletes across the board in any field that you're looking at. So there you have it, 13 steps to cold calling that really, really work. And if you want to learn my exact cold calling script to fly past gatekeepers, I'll see you in the next video right here.